Yo, welcome to another episode of Weird Growth, the podcast where we hear about the strange and often unpredictable journey that founders take. The conversation doesn't stop here. If you want to stay one step ahead and unlock access to exclusive insights, thought-provoking summaries of our latest episodes, and a curated collection of valuable resources from across the web, don't miss out on Ammo Marketing's monthly newsletter. You can subscribe by the link in the description. This episode, we have Harriet Mellor, who is director of Your Sales Co., which is a partner in deriving growth, building relationships, and achieving sales goals in the tech world. Welcome, Harriet. Thank you so much for joining us on Weird Growth.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here. I'm really excited about this chat because sales is one of those things we as marketers get asked a lot about, and there's a lot of sort of confusion about what's the difference between marketing and sales. Where does one line stop, the other begin? Really keen to hear your insights. You're a host of your own podcast as well.
I am, yes.
What's that called?
It's called Sell Like You.
Sell Like You. We'll put a link to your podcast in the show notes as well, and people should definitely check that out if they're interested in learning more. But before we do, could you please introduce yourself and how you came to do what you do?
Yes, thank you. Introduce myself. I feel like this is one where everyone expects me to pitch and give this whole succinct message of what I've done and where I've been. Sales is what I love to talk about. It's what I love to enable people to do. But I guess really a little bit about the journey to get there. If you're happy for me to go that
100%,
far,
yeah.
So my background essentially was events. That was where I wanted to be. It was glamorous and it felt fun and it was diverse and different every single day. Ended up getting into a hosting organisation in Manchester and running events for them. Very Google vibes. We had a slide that went out the building and back around again. It was amazing.
No way.
And we were doing events for them, but they were an IT hosting company. And I genuinely thought that the servers were in the cloud. Right? So I was like, I don't get how they are physical things. And we started building data centers and I got more involved in the business aside to the events I was running and the people that we had involved in the business. And I was like, I'm going to have to learn what all this means and what we do and how we do it. So I went down that journey and was blown away by the impact we were having across the world. Now, again, this was about 15 years ago. And so brought my journey into sales. I was like, no way, over my dead body, not going into sales, until I realized what we could actually do and the fact that it was up to us to go out there and tell people what it is that we did, how we did it, the impact that we had. And we needed to sell to do that. And essentially by reframing that sales viewpoint, moved my way into tech sales. And I've been there for the last 15 years, which has been an incredible journey. Moved from the UK into Australia and then set up Your Sales Co. about 4 years ago.
Amazing.
And that was through a love of sales, wanting to do more, wanting to help more people. I'm a real people connection person. And if I can have an impact on somebody's life, I've done my job. So that was where Your Sales Co. was born. And now we get to train and teach and work with incredible businesses around the world. We're working with a lot of businesses in Asia, across Australia, UK. My goal is to hit Middle East. That's next. That's kind of where we've landed today.
Well done. Sales is one of those things which people do, I don't know why, but shy away from. It's a critical part of any business or most businesses. What is it about sales, do you think, that people sort of get a little bit sort of not turned off by, but, it's one of the things which gets either, put to the side or it's left with the founder to do? Like, what is it about sales that has that stigma attached to it?
Yeah, I mean, I get it. I was there. I work with a lot of people that physically shake when it goes to picking up the phone. And I say like a physical phone instead of our mobiles. But I think for a lot of people, it comes down to what our preconceived ideas are and also the experiences that we've had. Depending on who you've worked for, where you work, sales can mean so many different things to so many different people. And so with that in mind, we need to be really mindful of the fact that it's our experiences that tailor the story and our future and where we're going to go. And I guess that's in life, isn't it? It shapes us throughout that journey and throughout our experiences. And so unfortunately in sales is that most people have bought a car. They've bought a secondhand car. They've bought a house. They've bought these big things that have often come with challenges and they've often come with, disappointment and mis-selling as well. And I think for that, we don't ever want to be that person. And so for me, going home and saying, I'm in sales, I just don't feel like I would have made anybody proud at that point. And I think, again, it was because of the journey that I've been on, I guess, really the exposure I'd had. And the moment that I had that understanding of what we could do let me go free and wild and do that. And most people don't have that experience. And again, I think it could be due to lack of exposure of the incredible things that businesses are doing or that the business you work for does. But sometimes the founders don't understand how to sell effectively. And so they're passing down and passing on strategies and processes that don't align with their values, the salespeople's values, and therefore they're not going to do a very good job of it, and therefore they're not going to enjoy it.
My view of it, my first job straight out of high school was in sales, and it wasn't necessarily by choice. I thought I was applying for a company called American Power Conversion, but it was just called APC, and it actually ended up being a steel manufacturing company. And I was, green straight out of high school. I just wanted a job, and I had worked at McDonald's previously,
Winning,
and on the front counter. And what I learned from Macca's in particular was just that dealing with people isn't scary at all. In fact, it's fun. Like having those relationships with people, with your customers. Not that you have very deep relationships with Macca's customers, but like, dealing with the public is actually a really enjoyable thing on the most part, and you get to help people in their day, and you get to, help them put a smile on their face. And when you look at it like that, actually sales is just about helping and just about, giving people a great experience. And, I wish there was a different word for it, to be honest, because, and like customer service maybe is where that comes in, but I think that's where the symbiosis between marketing and sales can come in too, is that if you do marketing really well, it's not sales. You're not trying to convince someone to do something they don't want to do. You're just trying to help them have a great experience and, sort of lubricate that process for them, I suppose.
Yes. And I think, again, like that, we talk about selling, serving, not selling, and that comes into that whole helping mentality. But selling happens in everyday life. Like we sell to our partners, we sell to our children, we sell to friends and people around us. We sell ourselves to try and get in that nightclub after it says it's closed. We've all done that, and that is all part of selling. And again, I've looked for other words, trust me, because being in a sales business, helping other people sell, often the business wants that to happen, but the team underneath. I mean, I work with lawyers and they don't want to learn how to sell. I can guarantee that. But when they understand that if you've got an additional service that will impact and help other, your clients that you're already working with, it's your duty to sell. It's your duty to tell them about what's going on. And I think, again, often people lean more towards marketing, which I think then is blurs the lines a little bit, because I think they are yin and yang. We need both, to have a really successful business. But often people go, oh, it's marketing, or it's sales, or you must mean marketing. And actually we don't, because marketing is getting you seen, it's building awareness, it's generating leads. I mean, you know more about that than I do, but the conversion bit comes back to sales. And if we don't know what we're doing, we can have all the leads in the world, but we can't convert them because we don't know the levers to pull. We don't know the questions to ask. We don't know the journey to take them on, which is a beautiful journey if you really, embody it and get yourself into it. But that's entirely up to you how you approach it and whether you're willing to let your guard down and really embrace sales.
Coffees for closers.
Yes.
And that scene in Glengarry Glen Rich is such a fantastic sort of case study, I suppose, of what sales shouldn't be, but also the leaning on the quality of the leads and the marketing for the excuse not to close.
Yes.
And there's always that kind of, like you say, yin and yang between marketing and sales, but also like the butting of heads, I suppose. So how do you think about what that relationship's like between marketing and sales?
In my experience, what's
what's your, what do you see works well?
Yeah. I mean, work well, number one, communication. Like bring the teams together. It's common sense, right? But actually it's often left out because marketing is driven by their function and sales driven by theirs. And what I often see is that sales team are going out and they're using success and they're using these stories and they're using these case studies, and marketing are running an entirely different campaign, which is to do with a totally different story, a totally different journey. And then the salespeople are getting phone calls being like, what's this offer about? What's this about? What's this? And they're like, I don't know. And so, they're looking around for this supporting department.
Yep.
And that's essentially what it should be. And so, I'm really champion getting teams together
Yep.
and learning from each other. An example, like one of the clients, Penton, I've worked with, for quite some time, they do it really well. They've got a marketing team that are incredible, but they've also got a sales team that are cohesive. And so at the end of each week or beginning of each week, they share what leads were working, what leads weren't, what's been the most common questions, the most common challenges. Is it aligned with what we've been training the sales team to do? Can we help them to do more? And so what needs to work well is more communication. The risk of that is that you have got teams going in totally separate directions, which is not going to be supportive for the business.
So literally a feedback loop where those two teams are communicating really closely and giving each other information about what they're seeing.
Yes.
Yeah, awesome. That makes perfect sense. I suppose from an earlier stage tech company's point of view, as we said, the founder's often it is the first salesperson in the team. How have you seen successful tech businesses scale that and go from the founder being the original salesperson to then maybe having their first sales hire, or maybe someone who's responsible for a bunch of different things, including sales? Yeah. What works there, do you think?
Yeah, getting all the information out of the founder's head, number one, that would be key. And I'd say stories, being the most important, I would say, aspect of that, because the founder can tell, that can share the story and the journey and the conversations that they've had. It's a very different sell to somebody that isn't the founder. Yeah. And so what I often see is that the founder will come up with this fantastic story of why they created the business and the journey they've been on, and they can pull on all of these different stories. But actually, as a salesperson coming in, they have no stories. They've got no founder-led, empowerment behind them. They can borrow that story, but we need to know, who have they worked with? Why have they engaged with us? Why did they purchase from you? Why did they continue working with you? What has that looked like over a period of time? And then enable the salesperson to go and create their own story. Why did they join the business? Lead from there. Because just because you can sell doesn't always mean you can train. And, I think that is something we need to be aware of as well. I see it done very well, and I also see it done poorly, because just because it works for you doesn't mean it works for everybody. And being mindful of what the levers are you need to pull, and the techniques and the processes that we need to learn and the skills that we need to hone are going to be important. But I find if we can just do one thing, which is pull stories out of the founders' heads, out of their experiences, you will be way more successful than if you just stay on a process level.
Genius.
And I think to answer the question about bringing on your first person is set the metrics early of what success is going to look like for you as the founder, because often they come in and they think that the salesperson's going to solve all their problems. They're going to make all the money for them, and they just have to pay a small little fee, and away we go.
Yep.
And salespeople, I'm speaking from myself here, we are emotional. We are, we've got high expectations. We are often coin operated. And so we need to make sure we're pulling the right levers and we're patting them on the back and we're seeing success early on. And success probably won't look like revenue in day one, especially if you're a startup, because not many people know who you are. And so the salesperson's job is actually education. It's supporting the marketing message, but it is going out and having coffees and conversations and going to networking events. And so in those early stages, let's look at other metrics like activities and expectations rather than revenue, so that we can support the salesperson in being successful, because they want to feel like they've won as much as you need to manage your internal expectations so that you know whether they're winning or losing.
Love that. So early on, the metrics to focus on, apart from revenue, might be how many coffees have you had this week? Yes. Or how many events have you had? How many business cards have you collected? Something like that. Yeah.
How many connections have you grabbed? Have you been able to pull in? How much intel have you been able to uncover? Are you on LinkedIn? Are you making connections there? So we can really broaden that out, and that can increase and scale as they move through. And then things can change. So it might be month 1, then month 2, then month 3. And then looking then at where the expectations are lying, you can turn it into, valid meetings, opportunities identified, pipeline growth, and then into revenue.
Beautiful. So the metrics to focus on evolve over time as you get more mature in that sales role. Yeah. Love it. What advice would you have to someone starting out? Something that popped out to me listening to your podcast was, my net worth is my network. What advice would you have to someone who's starting from ground zero on building their network? Where do you start?
start somewhere. Just get out there and have that conversation. You already have a network. If you think about everyone you've ever spoken to, worked with, engaged with in some form, shape or form, you are going to have a network there already. It might not be solidified. You might have a mobile number, but not an email. You might not be sure how to actually start out. LinkedIn is going to be my number one way to do that.
Okay.
It's an incredible platform. All you need on there is a photo and a name and a headline. I also have lots of free content of how to create profiles. Feel free to, I'll happily to share links to that as well. But essentially we're starting from who are we? What are we doing? What are we passionate about? Let's build a voice. And often people start to get a little bit scared at that point of having an opinion, having a voice, knowing what to post. Is it right? Is someone going to judge me for it? And again, we've all been there. But if we can start by sharing, some information as to who we are, who we're working for, or what we're working on, the industry we're in, interesting articles, interesting people we want to follow, and start adding the people on there, that's where you can start building a network. Not being afraid to reach out to new people is really key. I mean, I'll reach out to anybody and ask anybody for a coffee. And I would really encourage, I hope people, feel the same way about reaching out to me, because we learn from other people. We don't have all the answers. And so as soon as we start to build a network, we are not only exposing ourselves to more people, because we're also exposing ourselves to their network, but we learn from what others have done. Have they traveled down the same path? Have they been through similar things? Are they going where you want to go? But essentially your network comes down to just start with who you know, even if it is your mum and your brother and your auntie. But get started somewhere. And the more that you do that, the more people will be interested in who you are, what you've got to say, and then will want to grow with you as well.
LinkedIn's really interesting, right? And I love LinkedIn because it's still probably the one social channel which has the best potential for organic reach. In terms of the content that you post, but also just the networks that you can get into. I think there's a misconception out there. LinkedIn really is a people-to-people network. It's not a business-to-business network. It's about those interpersonal relationships and connections. And I think over time, though, it is becoming a little bit more, well, I'm just going to be on LinkedIn and I'm just going to get bombarded by salespeople. So what advice do you have to people on how to get the best out of LinkedIn, but also not to feel like, or not to be one of those spammy salespeople that, just cold outreach?
I mean, again, it's all about who you're connecting with as to whether you're going to get the spammy, connection requests, etc. I would advise people not to accept everybody, accept people that you want to work with that are in your orbit, would be an ideal customer, connected to an ideal customer, and start there. Don't just accept everybody. Know that as you evolve and change, your audience is likely to at the same time. But also note that will happen anyway. Look at your inbox. Your inbox is flooded with people telling you that they can sell you leads. And I'm like, do you know what I do? I just think that would take you 2 seconds to, have a quick look on the website, or just take a guess out the name as to, what it is that we're doing. Same thing on LinkedIn. People can be spammy. But I have seen that slope off in the last, I'd say, 6 months. Again, depending on who it is that we're connecting to, I would say.
What's the big problem you think? What would you say is the big problem you're solving for your customers with your Sales Co?
Knowing how to sell and how to enable your team to sell. Often what happens is that we see a team that is maybe underperforming and we're not sure why. So again, we come in, we do assessments, we can give you that very quickly. Part of, I guess, really what we'd call our superpower is being able to identify opportunities, weaknesses, strengths within about 30 minutes. We have a very robust onboarding process. We've also created a program called the Sales Skills Scorecard. Try and say that fast.
Okay. Sales Skills Scorecard. She sells seashells on the seashore.
Well done. You nailed it. And so with that, we're able to assess where sales team and salespeople are at, where their strengths lie, where their weaknesses lie. And it's part of a self-assessment. So it's based on where they feel they are succeeding and maybe need some extra support, but it's done in a way that isn't obvious. So they actually don't know what it is that they're telling us throughout the scoring mechanism that we've created. So that's still in its beta phases. So we're running that through a lot of our clients at the moment.
Fascinating.
To get some great feedback from, and it really highlights some areas as to where they can provide some extra support, but also know how we can support them as an external partner. But essentially, we solve problems that they either don't know exist or they know exist, but they don't know how to solve.
Something we hear a lot from clients who are looking to solve their sales problems or just at least sort of professionalize their sales process is what tools should we be using? What CRM do you recommend? How should we go about it? And it feels to me, like, not being, a sales expert myself, but it feels to me that's sort of like a symptom of a deeper problem. It's not a tool that's going to solve your problem. It's like, what are you using the tool in service of?
Yes.
How do you usually answer that question when someone asks you what CRM should we use?
Yeah, I mean, it depends.
Yeah.
So, that would always be my first. If we've worked with them or we are going to work with them, we do that as part of our engagement. But interesting when you mentioned there about, what's the tool and is that tool really going to solve? It is often similar to when someone says to me, we have a conversion problem. The chances are you don't have a conversion problem, you have a qualification problem.
Okay.
And so again...
What do you mean by qualification?
Discovery, uncovering information. We haven't gone deep enough. You've said, I need... marketing services. Okay, awesome. What marketing services do you need? Okay, cool. Here's a quote. And so, it's almost as high level as that to kind of go, what do we need to be able to quote? But we don't know anything else underneath that. And, I draw awful pictures of icebergs, and we show like the tip of the iceberg, which is what you've told me, and the bottom of the iceberg, which is the bits you haven't told me, and it's my job to uncover. And so those pieces down there is actually what's impacting your conversion. So same thing when we go back to tools and things that are going to enable the team. CRM, yes, will help you. It will capture data. If you don't have one already, I highly recommend one. Again, you can recommend generalist tools. So again, I recommend Pipedrive. I think it's a great tool for managing. Oh, awesome. For managing pipeline. It's not so great from a client management. Yeah. There are better ones out there. Yeah. However, if we're focusing on sales and we want to start somewhere, it's probably the most well-priced one on the market. It got extremely great, features and processes throughout it. But I also teach how to use Trello as part of a CRM, because some people don't want to pay for it. You're a tech startup, you haven't got money, to spend on CRMs, but we need data. Just start somewhere. Yeah. Spreadsheet is even okay as well.
100%.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's not really about the tool, right?
No.
It's about the process, the qualification through to, how are you actually taking people from that initial conversation to ultimately a sale, but what happens in between. So I suppose, what's the process that you take your customers through in discovering what that system of selling should be?
So first we look at what are they currently doing. So again, I'm not a reinvent the wheel kind of girl. I am what is currently working, what isn't working, what could work better. And then we highlight the areas where we would focus. And sometimes we go back and rebuild a foundation. So foundation may just be a knowledge awareness, a capability awareness. Can you pick up the phone? Do you understand tone and pitch and pace? All of that, they are foundationals. Sometimes we go that far. If you're new to sales, we'll take you through an online program first, which gives you all of the fundamentals. But essentially identifying that is that we ask a series of questions and we then go through a sales audit. So we look at their entire process which they share with us. We look at the tools, the data. We ask them to copy and paste emails into questionnaires, and I'm smiling because it's my favorite bit. I always kind of go, oh, like every time I read it, and often it is the area of most impact. Wow. When they're doing outbound, they're too long. They're all about them. They're about their story, their journey, not about how they can help. And so we go through, and again, everybody's different. Every business is different. You may even have 3 salespeople that are doing a great job, and here's some areas we need to fix. We might have other where they've got maybe 1 or 2 salespeople that are just not hitting the mark, and they need further development. So we provide a very tailored engagement. And we support them at different areas. Everybody learns differently. For me at school, I hated school. I hated doing exams, but get me in a practical environment. That's where I thrive. And so we need to be mindful of how people learn, and then how we nurture and support them as well ongoing. We often support sales managers as well, which is a really fun opportunity because often sales managers are not coached or developed to get into that role. They're often just the best salesperson promoted, which, again, there's lots of, pros and cons around doing that. But it's also looking at how we can provide the most or maximum results with the minimum impact internally, during our time with them.
What are some rules of thumb, just talking about that cold outbound sort of outreach stuff? What are some rules of thumb with what should be included in those emails? Obviously, everyone's a little bit different, but what are some do's and don'ts there?
Varied approach. So email, phone call, LinkedIn, post if you're game.
Okay.
Networking events. These are all forms of cold outreach. I generally say I remove the word cold because generally we know something about somebody and they will have heard of us in some shape or form.
So warm.
And so they are warm. They are welcome to hear from us. You know, so I think, you know, number one, mindset plays a massive part in our outreach. Having a diverse outreach is really important because somebody that responds to email may not respond to a phone call and vice versa.
Yep.
So if I just email you constantly and you're a phone call kind of guy, I'm missing a trick. If I message you on LinkedIn and you're not there, why am I not emailing you or calling you? So again, there's lots of different and varied ways for us to do that. So again, be mindful of mindset, varied approach. When we are doing a phone call and an email, I like to have an email with a follow-up phone call. So if I'm going to email you, my email includes information about your industry.
Yep.
It includes information about what I know about your industry, the success we've seen in your industry, either similar organizations or industry led. So if you are attacking a new industry, then just consider about how you could relate similar stories, challenges, use cases from others and how you can bring that into play. And then using information where you can have a call to action. So asking them for a call, a meeting, a next step without assuming that's going to happen. Yep. Because often what we see is attachments, big no-no.
In terms of an email attachment?
Yes, an email attachment.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I haven't said yes to you sending me that.
Yeah.
So what I see in the biggest mistake, and again, I think a lot of people, if they're listening, they will say, I sent that. And the reason is that often what happens is people go, I'm going to put everything on an email. And you can make a decision if you would like to speak to me or not. And that doesn't work because we get halfway down that email, if you're lucky, and I've lost interest because it's about me, my services, what it is I offer, attaches my brochure with 17 ways you can work with me. And then I've got no call to action. Reach out if you'd like to know more. So it's all on you to read, make a decision, and contact me. That's not what we're doing in sales. We're not doing a good enough job if that is our approach. Whereas when we go through, keep it short, keep it to the point, focus on the successes you've seen or the challenges you've overcome. Are they similar to what they're experiencing? Would they be open to a coffee? Would they be open to me sharing more before we have a coffee?
Yep.
And then leave it there.
Yep.
So it's short. I can see it on my phone in one screen or in one, email on my laptop. And my phone call then in 3-4 days, a week's time is, hey, I sent you an email. If your email looks anything like mine, I've got 597 unread emails. And I thought I'd pick up the phone and just see whether this date time works for you. We then talk about focus on their successes, why we want to have a conversation, and we leave it. So the conversation should only be 3, 4, 5 minutes long, maximum.
Yep.
We value their time, we value our time, and then we schedule a time that will suit when we move on. If at that point it's a no, I welcome feedback, out of interest, what are you currently doing for that? How is that currently being navigated? Ask one question, leave them to it, connect with them on LinkedIn and move on.
Love it.
Because that way we're able to have a very succinct process. It doesn't take a lot of time. It doesn't feel overwhelming. Everybody can do it, and you never know what will come back later.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be rocket science, right?
No.
And I think that's the thing that a lot of founders might feel is this is overwhelming. I don't know where to start. I've done it to date just based on my own network, and now I'm trying to build a process in the business. But if you can focus on doing one thing really well, then and consistently do that, it can be a lot more enjoyable for everybody involved, I guess. For founders who are looking to hire a salesperson, what should they be looking for? Should they be looking for the sales gun who's got 20 years experience? Should they be trying to find someone fresh out of uni or not even, hasn't even gone to uni, and just, has the right attitude and wants to skill them up, or somewhere in between? What do you think works?
Well, as a graduate of the University of Life, not going
Is that
to university.
on your Facebook profile?
Yeah, that's definitely on my profile. I think accreditations, learning, it varies depending on who you want to get, and again, depending on the industry that you're in. So if we lean on that tech startup side, I would say if you want somebody that can hit the ground running, you've got no time to support them, work with them, you're going to need somebody with a little bit of experience, or you're going to need to hire somebody that can be developed through an external party.
Yep.
So that would be that's where your decision lies.
Yep.
Knowing that if you are hiring somebody with a lot of experience, they're going to come in with their views, their processes, the way that they want to do it. habits, good or bad, and that's going to be up to you to whether that is good or bad for your business. If you are hiring somebody that is junior, again, they're going to need more support, more nurturing. The expectations are going to need to be met based on their capability and their expertise, but also knowing that they don't need to be in your industry. Something that I love empowering, especially technical salespeople, to do is sell anything, because the more complex, the more simple we need to make it as salespeople.
Okay.
Because if we are selling a complex solution or service or product, then we need to make sure that it makes sense at an English level. It makes sense from an English perspective, where we can explain the outcomes, explain the benefits, and look at what it is that it can do rather than how it does it.
Yep.
Tech people love talking about how it does it.
Oh, yeah.
And so if we can get a salesperson that is focused on outcomes, the least technical, the better, in my opinion, because we focus on outcomes, we focus on building relationships. Whereas when we're technical, we focus on the tech and the rest of it comes. And we know that people buy from people, and we need that relationship to nurture, and we bring in those specialists. So leverage the specialists you've got within your team. They're there for a reason. They're very clever. They're very smart. They know what they're talking about. Plug them in at the right moment, but get people that can build relationships, and choose whether you can provide support and enablement and development and investment potentially at that point, or whether you need somebody that's got more experience, but know that the price point will come with whichever one you choose.
Beautiful. What would you say to young people who are looking at non-technical, wanting to get into the technology / startup sort of space? What would you say to them about when they're considering whether a sales type role might be right for them as a starting point?
If they are interested in the industry, if they like people, if they want to learn more about the industry and develop their knowledge, then I think for them it's a great place to start. I mean, I used to support graduates coming into the tech industry in the UK, and we were able to nurture them to learn so much about business, so much about people, so much about these skills that you're going to use throughout the rest of your life. And so it's amazing for me to see those people that I worked with. And I actually bumped into one of the girls I trained back in the day on the train going to London when I was back home a couple of years ago. And she's like, Harriet, she's like, I still talk about you today, and what it is that that we taught them, back then about sales. And she stayed in tech sales. There's a lot of people that haven't. But again, they're able to learn the journey, learn the industry, and use that to their benefit. If they're unsure about coming in, go and meet people, go and have a coffee, reach out to somebody, say, I'm interested in getting into the industry. Would you mind if I pick your brain for 20 minutes on what it's like to work at that company? Don't be shy, go out there, find it, listen to podcasts, connect with people on LinkedIn, get out there and challenge yourself. If you want to have a go, say you're going to have a go, the chances are you'll know in 3 months if it's for you or not.
I think that's awesome advice. And I think it's just such great foundational skill to have, learning about business in general. You quite often, working with the, senior people in your business as well. You get to see under the hood about how the business works. You're not just on the tools developing a product or pumping out a widget. You're there in the thick of it. And it's actually like a really critical part of any business. Is to bring the revenue in, bring home the bacon.
Yeah. Without it, you're a hobby. That's essentially how I used to look at it was, if you're a business that's creating something, generating something, and you make no sales, you've just got a really expensive hobby. Yeah.
So you're a founder yourself, obviously. What sort of led you to make that decision to take a leap and create your own business in this space?
Well, this is my second business.
What was your first?
So first was a day spa.
Really?
I'm gonna really throw you all off now.
Tell us about the day spa.
So the day spa journey came about. I was in tech sales. I just knew there was something more for me out there. And I had always been really interested in business. I'd been part of these little groups, and I remember there was a group called Take Flight. It was run by a girl called Meg Burridge.
Okay.
She's now living in Europe, and she's working, I think, for Salesforce or one of those, CRMs. And she created this 7-week course, and it brought different people in for different aspects of business. And it was to do with legal and accounting and PR and everything we'd need to know. And at the time, there was an opportunity. A friend of a friend was renting a space. Next to them, a space was coming up, and it was a bottle shop in Mullaloo, northern suburbs of Perth.
Yeah.
And I was like, we could turn that bottle shop into a spa for sure. So out comes the fridge, in comes the spa.
Wow.
And you may ask, why the spa? I was really focused on a journey of, well-being. Working in sales is a very stressful job. If you let it be. And I think I've learned a lot over the years of really knowing how to manage my well-being and also, the balance in work and life. Whether there is a balance or not, who knows? So I think within that journey, I've always been really passionate about that. Coming from England, there was just nowhere I wanted to go and have a facial. There was nowhere I could go and have a really nice, relaxing massage. And so I just thought, why not create it ourselves? So this was my tester in business. I was like, do you know what? It's going to cost us 50 to 100 grand to set up. Worst case scenario, I lose that money. I'm in sales. I can make it back. So that was my view of the world.
Attitude. I love that.
Yeah, it was, it was only money at that stage.
Yeah,
so
money, it's a gas.
Exactly. So, I was ready to go. We had a great vision. I actually did it with a friend. So she was a reflexology specialist and we met through reflexology and I was like, do you want to come and run the spa? I'm going to set it up. And she was like, I want to do it with you. So we set out, we knew nothing about setting up this business, about the intricacies of working with councils, about the requirements to creating a business and changing a business. There's so much that goes into that. I've learned a lot. And it took us about 6 months. So we did it in complete fit out. We had 4 treatment rooms. We launched, it would have been now about 6 years ago. And we sold it about 3 years ago. So we built it, we had it for 3 years. We built it to multi-six figures. We sold it. And then I was able to then focus on Your Sales Co, which I'd started in the meantime. So I was working full time. I had a salon and I also had Your Sales Co in the back end. So decided something had to give. I was extremely fortunate to be in a great position. I loved my job, so it was the hardest thing to do. But now it's been the best thing I ever did. And, being able to free up my time with selling the spa has been an accolade I could tick off. For me, it was a tester. We succeeded. We had challenges along the way. We learned about social media, which back then I didn't have much knowledge of. We learned about managing people, which again I'd done, but in a business, not in our own business. We navigated COVID.
Oh, wow.
And we still came out the other side really strong. And
Incredible.
so we put the business up for sale. I managed that process because that's what I do. It came out really well. We ended up selling to another salon who's got now a second location in Perth. And that experience was great. So for me, it was kind of just part of the journey. At no point did I think, wow, I've done this great thing. And sometimes I do have to stop and look at what we've actually achieved because it is quite amazing.
It is. So. And I think the common thing that I see in any successful entrepreneur is they take every sort of enterprise they undertake, whether it's starting a new business or generating a new department or product, as a learning process. Like, no one has all the answers. If we all had the answers, we'd all be billionaires. And so everything you do in business is, you've got to be open to the lessons that it teaches you, because that's how you improve and get better. Yeah. Well done. So with your Sales Co, what could possibly be next for the future? It sounds like you're doing a roaring trade. You mentioned Middle East. How does this business go from where it is today into the future?
That's the question I ask myself every day.
We should all be asking that question.
Yeah, exactly. If we weren't, we wouldn't be growing, would we?
Yeah.
I think the team's growing. We've got 3 people. We just onboarded 2 new salespeople, and that's been the scariest part because it's what I do.
Yeah,
and so it has to be really good. Otherwise, they're going to judge whether I can actually do this or not.
Same being a marketing agency, you've got to do good marketing. Funnily enough.
Exactly. And so I think the team's growing. We're finding areas that we can accelerate in. One of the areas that we are growing at the moment is the Tech Sales Accelerator, which is our online tech sales course.
Wow.
It's the only one of its kind online at the moment. So we're really leveraging that. And it's something that I really want to take globally. It's something that every tech business needs it, in my opinion.
100%.
It gives them an extremely fantastic onboarding process. It gives them a great introduction to their business. So it's a supporting aspect of their business, not just learn how to sell. We've got some really amazing businesses using it, and we're seeing the impacts already, which is what we're there to do. And that's what gets us out of bed in the morning. And so for me, it's about really being able to drive that growth, but also be able to then focus on the strategic partnerships we've got. last year saw us do roadshows across Australia for some large vendors. And I love vendors in tech. They're my favorite. They are ambitious. They are prepared to give anything a go. They've also got lots of cash.
Love it.
And so they're able, to put more in, to give more back to their partners. And because I've been a reseller and a partner, I understand both sides of the coin. And so we're in a unique position to be able to support others, and to be able to really take this where it needs to go. So for me, it's definitely more online and more exposure in other countries, and scaling the team at a reasonable pace. I think for me, I'm very conservative in my life anyway. I'm a saver. I bought a house at 21. I was ready and raring to go at that point, but I'm very, very risk aware, and I make decisions based on that. So I'm not going to run ahead, too fast, but I know that we probably need to take some bigger leaps, which is what we're going to be doing this year.
Very exciting. So bottling up that secret sauce from the services business and turning that into a product which can be globally scalable.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Love that. What's one big piece of advice you have for founders of particularly sort of earlier stage tech startups who are looking to take the next step to grow?
That's a great question. Piece of advice, I would say to take the data that you are getting and gathering throughout your entire business and make decisions based on that data progressing. Because if you've done it once, you can do it again. Find
the thing that's working.
Yes.
And extrapolate on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, with the data, because there's so much data within our businesses. And again, for me, I highlight a lot of the sales data of, who we're speaking to, how we're speaking to them, the lead time, the process time, etc. We can apply that across our business in its entirety. So if we're looking at the people, how long does it take to onboard a person? How long does it take them to be effective? What's working for us on LinkedIn versus what's working for us on email or marketing, strategies, etc. Yep. Take that data, take what's working, and look at if we did that 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, where would that lead us? One of the questions I always ask around sales is that we're here to improve your sales posture. Can you handle it? Because if you can't, there's no point us being here, because we will be successful. So be mindful of what you wish for. You will more than likely get it. But again, just listen to the data. It's there. And I would say, ask other people in your industry, go and speak to others. We are, we're there to collaborate, not to compete.
Yep.
I work with a lot of sales coaches. I talk to them. We find what's going on in the industry, because just because we're in the same industry does not mean that we need to be at loggerheads. There is enough business to go around for everybody. And we all bring our own unique view.
Yep. There's plenty to go around. Yep. Okay, show and tell time on Weird Growth is we just ask our guests to share the favourite tool or device or just the thing in their lives that makes their life better every day. What is it that you couldn't live without? Tool or device? I'd say my dogs first. If you were to say tool or advice, I would say my laptop. Yep. Oh, phone. Does both. Phone. I'm going to change my answer and say phone, because I can do my emails on my phone. I've got my CRM on my phone. I can call people, and I love calling people. I'm the people that people screen, because they'd rather text me than me call them. Staff full of 20 and 30 somethings in this office. Yeah. I'm like the old man at 37 who still insists on using the phone. Like, just pick up the bloody blower and have a chat with somebody. Yeah. Having the back and forth on email or even text, just context and everything gets lost. In person's best, obviously, but I just do think it's a lost art, the phone call. It is. And the success rates are on the rise for phone calls, as an FYI. Is that right? Because less people are doing them. Yeah. So when we do them, people are like, oh yeah, I'll take that call. There you go. Very, very good. Okay. Well, final plug and ask, if anyone's interested in learning more about your sales co or you, what should they do? LinkedIn, probably the best place to get to know me better if they want to go and do that. So they can just search Harriet Mellor. We've also got yoursalesco.com and Your Sales Co on LinkedIn as well. Magic. And they should also check out your podcast, which is called Sell Like You. Sell Like You. And they should definitely check that out. It's all about sales. Yep. And we've got some incredible guests on there as well. Yeah, well done. Love a good podcast. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much, Harriet. I think that was a fascinating chat, and just so many really good practical things that people can do on their sales journey. Really appreciate you being on Weird Growth.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. Thank you for listening to Weird Growth as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or any audio channel, this is filmed as well. There's 2 amazing video angles as well. Check us out on YouTube. And please do leave us a review and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode. But until next time, I'm Cam Sinclair at Ammo Marketing. This has been Weird Growth. Bye-bye.